Avatar: The Way of the Water, a movie over a decade in the making, at least in the waiting. Is it worth the wait? Let's talk about that. Hey guys, I'm Karl. Welcome to my movie film show. Feel free to subscribe down below if you would like to, but today we're here to finally talk about James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of the Water, or as some people call it, The Smurfs 2. Now, all the way back in the day when I started this YouTube channel, I started a little series called Worst Movie Ever, and Worst Movie Ever contender number 9 was Avatar. Although really that was just a clickbait thing, but there's a full recap of the original movie right there on the channel. If you want to check that out, I'll post it up here, maybe in the description. Apologies for the terrible audio. I didn't have the best of equipment. And you shouldn't blame your own tools, but that microphone I had was really bad. But getting back to it, Avatar: Way of the Water. I'll be honest, for the last week, I've been seeing things coming out about this movie. First of all, we get all the big reviewers, all the big newspaper reviewers in particular, coming out with these big quotes that they put on the poster. And I never trust those because it just comes across like their views are perhaps a little insincere, perhaps they've had some push towards a certain way. And I'm not naming names, I'm not claiming anybody, I'm not pushing that on anybody in particular. It's just certain review places, in particular newspapers, I don't trust their reviews. So I wait for actual reviewers to come along and people whose opinions I trust. Hopefully someday I'll be people's opinion to trust, although everybody has their own opinion. And of course, we'll never agree on every movie that's out there, you and me. But for the most part, I think I've got fairly good judgment on most movies, and hopefully we can agree on some things. But like I said, in the week leading up to Avatar: Way of the Water, slowly those fantastic reviews saying it was one of the best movies they've ever seen slowly started to turn to mixed reviews. I did say I don't trust newspaper reviews too much, but I saw a funny post on Facebook from a newspaper here in Ireland called the Irish Independent. And that's, one of the more reputable newspapers here in Ireland. And their post for James Cameron's Avatar, I just read the title, I didn't read the review. But here's their post on Facebook, I'll throw it up on the screen. James Cameron's belated high-concept sci-fi sequel is ponderous, grandiose, and very, very long. And then down below you can see Avatar: Way of the Water review. I just wanted it to stop as a fog of boredom came over me. Now that is a stunning title, but I don't agree with it. But I do understand it, and we'll get into that. The movie is 3 hours and 10 minutes long. That's where the grandiose part comes. That's pretty self-indulgent from James Cameron, and it's completely not necessary. There's at least 30 minutes of this movie, if not an hour of this movie, which could easily be trimmed out and the movie would still be fantastic. In fact, it would be even better than it currently is. Avatar, the original movie, when that came out all the way back in 2009, I believe, it blew me away. I went to the movie theater, I sat there all by myself, I watched it in 3D and I was blown away. The visuals were some of the best visuals I'd ever seen in a movie theater. This time around, I wasn't blown away. Don't get me wrong, the movie is visually stunning, but I've seen it before. We've seen the Avatar stuff before. We've seen the creature creation before. We know how good James Cameron is at making movies. I don't quite get why it took a decade to make it. It's not a super detailed, heavy meaning story, and the visuals are fantastic. But in the modern day, they should be able to make those pretty quicker. Good words. Hey, it's been a long week. I think a lot of people will be put off by the runtime of the movie. I myself was considering not going to see the movie because the commitment of 3 hours and 10 minutes in a movie theater at this time of year when it's freezing cold here now. And last night when I went to go watch the movie, I had to defrost the car. The roads were all icy, and I was thinking to myself, maybe this is a bad idea. If they don't have the heating on the movie theater, it's going to be a pretty unenjoyable experience. However, luckily they did have the heating on, so what a story. But I made the plunge to go see it. Trepidatious though that I could be faced with mega boredom, and on top of that, needing to go for pee breaks a lot, because whoever decided to base this movie around water, that's a bad idea. Because number one, you've got people sitting in the movie theater for a long time, and everybody goes to movie theaters, they pick up popcorn or drinks or whatever, and then you've got the sounds of water rushing all the time. You're just asking for trouble right there. James Cameron did come out not too long ago, and I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but he said something along the lines of, if people can binge watch an entire TV show, they can sit through a 3-hour movie. Which, 3-hour movies, they're nothing new. But more and more that time is eking up and up and up, and filmmakers' regard for people's attention spans and people's lives is slowly slipping away. To the point where right now there's a rumor going around that James Cameron has a 9-hour cut of Avatar 3. Which he's asked the studio to do the entire special effects for. Now they're going to tell him to feck off with that, but he has a 9-hour cut of that movie. That's insane. That's more than the original trilogy of Star Wars. That's just in one movie as well. If that movie comes out and it's anything like 9 hours, I am not going to see that movie. But back to Avatar 2, The Way of the Water. They needed to do something completely different in this movie. It couldn't be the exact same as the original movie. In the original movie, they had the guy for Small Soldiers. He looked like this. And he was the bad guy overall. However, the main objective was that the people, humans, had gone to Pandora to get unobtainium, an element that they couldn't obtain. Very valuable. And they found that the Tree of Life is where the highest containment of this unobtainium was, so they wanted to get it. You know, people are bastards and all that. But in the long run, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the original Avatar, why you're watching a review on the sequel, I don't know if you haven't seen the original. Overall, nature fights back. Awa, as they call it, fights back and helps the people, and you know, Jake Sully becomes a Na'vi instead of a human, betrays his own race just so he can, you know, get a woman. People do strange things for love. But overall, the story was fairly basic, and that's one of the criticisms everybody had of the original. The story was basic while the visuals were fantastic. But the main soldier was trying to kill Jake Sully for betraying them, and ultimately he got killed by Neytiri, Zoe Saldana's character, and he gets killed. He's 100%, he's in a mech, arrows through him, 100% dead. So in Avatar 2, they bring him back because they've saved his memories on a USB or something like that. It's sci-fi, they can get away with this stuff. But basically they put his memories and his life into a different avatar, into one of the Na'vi avatars, and bring him back. That could open up a can of worms going forward, because why couldn't they just have Jake Sully on file as well, put him in a new avatar before he met the Na'vi, and make him the bad guy? I fully suspect that in either Avatars 3 or 4 or even 5, that's what's going to happen. We'll get Jake Sully versus Jake Sully. But now that the bad guy is back, he's hunting Jake Sully and Neytiri and their family for revenge this time. Not because they want unobtainium, it's because they want to kill Jake Sully, because he is leading the rebellion against the humans on Pandora. But along the way, they also find another element that is highly valuable in these whale type of creatures, which is only a minor thing in this movie, but I'm sure it's going to come into play in other movies as well. Jake and Neytiri take their family, which has newly established at the start of the movie, including Nitayam, who is shown being born, or they show him at the start of the movie being raised up like Simba and the Lion King in front of all the people, and declare his name. And as soon as that happened, I said, well, that kid's going to be dead by the end of the movie. And spoiler alert, he was. But Jake and Neytiri decide they have to get their family away from the tree people and go see the sea people. And this is where we get slightly different blue people in the movie. I'm not going to run through the entire story because we'll be here for days. But what I will say is that the movie at the beginning had a lot of exposition, had a lot of explaining things, over-explaining things. And it also had a lot of similarities to the original movie. Throughout the movie, there's a lot of similarities to the original movie. But what I will say is, for the first 2 hours of the movie, I personally found myself really engaged in the movie, really enjoying it. More and more as the story wore on, I found myself sitting there just engrossed in the movie and really enjoying it and not noticing the time going by. I felt the pacing was particularly strong. Then they gear up for the final battle, as every movie ultimately does, certainly sci-fi and action movies. And I said to myself, okay, maybe this movie's about to end, maybe it's whizzed by at a ridiculous pace and it's been amazingly good. And then that end battle came, the final hour of the movie. And then the second end battle came. And then the third end battle came. And then they had to escape. And then I think there was another battle. And just that final hour seemed to just drag on and drag on. And going back to that mention of the Irish Independence Review, when they said, I just wanted it to end, I think a lot of people are going to be thinking that way, because they really, really dragged out the ending with fake endings. There's so many points that could have been an ending. They could have wrapped up the movie and left it on a certain cliffhanger, and they just kept going. As I mentioned, there could have been about an hour of this movie cut out, and it would have been truly sensational. But instead, there's certain parts of the movie where it wears on a little bit, and that's dragged down the quality of the movie, the quality of the story, in my opinion. And throughout the movie, as I mentioned, there is a lot of exposition where they over-explain things. They tell us things rather than show us things. In particular, when they're hunting the whale-like creatures, I believe they're called a Tulkan. When they're hunting those, there's various scenes with the various actors where they're like, this is why we do this. This is why we shoot them with the balloons. This is why we shoot them with the diamond tipped arrow or the explosive tipped arrows. And they just over explain it a little bit too much rather than show it. Now, James Cameron is one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. That can't be denied. He's made so many unbelievable movies. Aliens, True Lies, The Abyss, Titanic, of course, and even Avatar itself, the original one. It's a decent little movie. It's not the greatest movie of all time, perhaps visually, but nobody can ever claim James Cameron's not a great filmmaker. It would simply be idiotic to claim that. And I'm certainly not a better filmmaker than James Cameron, and I'm not claiming that. So sitting here as a critic myself, I can only give you my opinion of what I enjoyed in the movie. I can't say he did this wrong in his movie, or he did that wrong in his movie. I am aware that comes across when I'm saying there's too much exposition here and there, or saying that some of the story wears on, but from my experience, that is just true. That's the things that brings the movie down. And if they had a little bit less of each of those, if they cut out about 30 minutes of the movie, trimmed it down, because there's various things that are repeated within the movie, if they just trimmed it down a little bit and removed a lot of that exposition that they have within the movie, this could have been one of the best movies we've had in the last 10 years, in my opinion. Some of the action is fantastic, although there is various action scenes where it's hard to tell what's happening and who's being killed until ultimately the fight is over. Even to the point where there's one character who's shot, but we don't see that until, you know, he's in the water with his friends and he goes, "I've been shot." But we didn't actually see it. It was kind of hinted at that's what happened, but you don't see the actual bullet go into him. You don't see a blood splatter. But overall, as I said, the movie looks spectacular. And I didn't watch it in 3D and I didn't watch it in IMAX. And that was on purpose because I didn't want the visuals to overload my senses of going, wow, this movie's truly spectacular. I only watched it in a standard screen in my local movie theater. And even still, the visuals blew me away. There is one thing in the movie which was in the original movie as well, and I criticized when I mentioned it in Worst Movie Ever. They have these weird dog things. They're kind of oily looking creatures and they just don't fit. They don't look right. They don't sit into the background very well. They look like poor CGI characters to me. And they kept them in it for just one small shot in this movie. It's one of the only bad visuals, in my opinion, in the movie. But the story, for the most part, is better than the original Avatar movie. I think the criticism of the visuals are fantastic, but the plot is lacking, is lazy. It's an easy criticism to claim with something like this. But I do think this film is a lot better than the original Avatar movie. I think the story is just the beginning of something much bigger, and it sets up the next movie pretty damn well. It sets up the series pretty damn well. I think there is some big shocks coming. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jake and Neytiri killed off in the next two movies, and to focus on the kids a bit more. They have the beginning of a love story, and you know, they have whatever Sigourney Weaver's character is now, what she's going to become. I think she's a Jedi. She can just control the world around her. But overall, I found myself, for the most part, with this movie, being really engaged for large parts of the movie. Not being bored too much within the entire 3 hours. I do think the movie could have been shorter, but overall, I really enjoyed the movie. So ultimately, we come down to a rating out of 10 for Avatar: The Way of the Water. And as I mentioned, I really enjoyed the movie, but I don't think it's one of the best movies of the year. For me, it was a solid, enjoyable movie, and for that reason, I will give it a 7 out of 10. Some people might think that's low, and if you do, let me know in the comment section below. However, maybe you hated the movie altogether, and if you did, let me know in the comment section below why exactly you did. But let me know your thoughts on the movie in the comment section below. What would you give it out of 10? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know all about it in the comment section below. And maybe Avatar isn't your cup of tea. Maybe you want something a little scarier. And I've got a review for you right over here for a movie called Barbarian, which is out now on Disney Plus here in Ireland and the UK. You should definitely check that movie out. And if that's not your cup of tea, there's another video to check out right over here.